Welcome guys to the magnificent resort town of Golden Sands in Bulgaria. And what you see back there, that magnificent blue sea, is the Black Sea. And we're about 20 minutes away from the city of Varna, the airport of Varna. And it's a fabulous place. I'm going to be here for 2 weeks. I come here often, but never as a YouTuber. So I'm hoping over the next 2 weeks we'll share some moments with you guys out and about speaking to people. But today I was looking to do something a little bit different. I put a post online a couple of days ago into my community asking you guys how you felt about the possibility of me doing talking head videos, kind of like a video podcast. And overwhelmingly you guys said, yeah, it'd be interesting. 94% of you said, yeah, it's a good idea. And the reason why I'm doing this is because, you know, for the last year I've been posting videos and I am super grateful, super impressed with the results. I'm now at 7,500 of you guys. And I was thinking, what can I do to take it to the next level? And I think frequency of posting is an important thing, but you got to understand, you can't always go out with a camera and post weekly. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes you're dependent on the weather. Sometimes you're just not in a place where there's anything to really record of interest. And the last thing I want to do is put something online that I don't like or that I wouldn't want to watch myself. So I decided, well, you know what? My life as a traveler started way before YouTube. And as a matter of fact, 90% of what happens to me while I'm traveling happens when the camera is switched off and not even in my hand. So I figured, why not share with you guys some stories, some experiences, some knowledge, some tips, and, you know, change the format a little bit, but still keep it relevant and hopefully make it just as entertaining. So in this episode, I want to share with you a story that happened to me in 1996. Now, when I was calculating before this video how long ago that was, I couldn't believe that it's been 26 years. In my mind, that's just not possible. But 26 years ago, I got kidnapped in Budapest, and it was a very, very scary, very unusual situation. And listen, I'm not trying to give you tips on how to not get kidnapped or what to do in the event that you're kidnapped. No, but I did take a lot from this. How to react to things, how to anticipate things in advance. And I want to share this story with you because I think it could be interesting and it could be valuable. So first of all, I want you to go back to 1996. For those of you who can remember 1996, and those of you that can't, I'll tell you what it was like. You couldn't just hop on your phone and look at booking and see what hotel you're going to stay in and see what flights are available. Back then, you were very limited. Now, I was at Brussels airport. I had just flown in from Tel Aviv airport. I got a phone call from my office in Miami saying I needed to go to Budapest to meet some people. And I was at the airport, and what you did in those days, if you didn't have access to a travel agent, you went to the counter of the national airline. That was Malev. And I went over there, bought a ticket for the next flight to Budapest, and I was on my way. I flew to Budapest. Oops, shaking a little bit. I flew to Budapest and landed, and little did I know that their language, Magyar, sounds nothing like you've ever heard before. It's, first of all, I didn't speak Russian at the time, so that wasn't going to help me. But the language itself, the only thing I could say is that it sounds Finnish. I had some exposure to Finnish, but I'm like, it sounds Finnish, but it's really not. So, and I was right. It's a standalone country language. It's linked to Finnish, but there's no way you're going to understand it if you know. And at the time, very few people also spoke English. So I've landed at the airport. I've got nowhere to stay. And I made my way to the information desk, and I saw the young lady there, and I said, I need a room for the night. No problem, £80. At the time I thought to myself, £80, it's a lot of money. It was back then. I could find a hotel in London in those days for that price, but okay, fair enough. I'm here for a couple of days. I'm not gonna... She gives me a little receipt and says, sit there, the driver will come and take you to your hotel, the shuttle bus. And I'm like, okay, so I'm sat with all these business people, and the driver eventually comes. We all get onto this little minibus, and he's driving around town, stopping at all the nice hotels, you know, the Hiltons, the Hyatts and whatnot. And then eventually he stops in a shady looking place in front of a metal door with a hole in it. And there was just me and another guy left in the bus, and I'm like, please let it be him. Just don't tell me that's where I'm staying. He opens the door, slides it open, he goes, you, out. So I grabbed my bag from behind. I had a suit bag at the time, and I'm poking in, looking at through this metal door, and there's guys washing cars. So I'm like, I've got this address written on the paper, and I walk up to one of the guys, show him the paper, and he goes, so kind of like 4th floor. Fortunately, at least there was an elevator, a very old one with these accordion doors, and I make my way up to the 4th floor, find the apartment, ring the bell. This old lady, she must have been about 80 years old, opens the door, lets me in, shows me to my room. There's no communication, absolutely nothing. I mean, so I asked to use the phone. I made a phone call to the people that I was supposed to meet, explained to them the address where I was staying, and they were going to come and pick me up, take me to their office, which they did. We went to their office. They took me for a nice tour around Budapest. We went to the Gerbourg and everything else, and it was really nice. Then, unfortunately, when I got to their office, you know, things didn't pan out, business didn't happen. So I went back to the hotel and said, all right, I'm just going to bide my time here and get out of Budapest, visit the city. And one thing I absolutely love, if you guys don't know that I'm fascinated with food already, is Hungarian goulash. And there was not going to be the possibility of being in Budapest, in Hungary, and not experiencing an authentic Hungarian goulash. So I decided to venture out. Now, when I came out of my apartment into this neighborhood, I can't remember what it was called, but this was a really shady neighborhood at the time. Very ethnic, very loud, very run down. And I started walking through the streets, and I found this cozy little cafe / type restaurant, and I sat down. Gentleman came out. Through difficult communication, I managed to gather that they did have Hungarian goulash. I ordered me a serving, as well as a coffee and a water. I was the only one in the restaurant. Meanwhile, some other people walked in, straight into the kitchen, and after about 5 minutes, some guy comes out with the check and gives it to me, and I'm like, it's unusual. I mean, all right, McDonald's, Burger King, KFC, you pay beforehand, but in a sit-down restaurant. But first time in the country, I figured, well, perhaps this is how they do it here. And I changed some money at the airport. I remember I changed $1,000 US, so I knew exactly how much I had. I hadn't spent anything because they picked me up from the apartment. It was all expenses, driving around, showing off and showing me the city. So I knew I still had the full amount in my pocket. Now the Hungarian forint, the exchange rate was ridiculous. I mean, $1,000 was hundreds of thousands of forints. And I remember looking at the check, and I'm like, wait, this is almost all my money. And I'm like saying to the guy, listen, I think there's a mistake. This is like over $800. And he's like, no, pay. Getting aggressive. I'm like, no. Goulash, water, coffee. Too much. You pay. Anyway, he's taken the paper off me. He's crossed out the amount that he's put on, and he's just added more. Now we're about $900. I'm like, oh, what the hell have I gotten myself into? Anyways, to make a short story boring, they wanted my credit card. They wanted, which I didn't give to them, by the way. They wanted to know where I was staying, which I didn't even know. So after about 20 minutes of arguing back and forth, a couple of other guys came out. And now is when I started to really get nervous. And they were talking in their language, but this did not sound like Hungarian. This language I recognized. I didn't speak it, but it was Russian. And I knew that for a fact. And next thing I know, they said, all right, no problem. You have no credit card, no hotel, no nothing, no problem. They ordered a cab. Now they've sat me in the middle. I've got two guys dressed in black leather on either side. There's one in the passenger seat, there's the cab driver, and believe it or not, they took me to the exact place I was staying. We went up to the 4th floor and the lady opened the door, let them in, we all waltzed in. Now what you have to bear in mind is that I was traveling with quite a substantial amount of money at the time. I think I had about $30,000 in cash in a money belt on me, and at the time in Eastern Europe that was a ridiculous amount of money. That could get you taken into a forest and buried for that kind of money. So at the time my mind was constantly thinking, how the hell do I get out of this, and how do I avoid them finding any of this? So I knew I kind of had to start being compliant and getting away with out of this situation as best I could. So I went into the room, ripped off the money belt. It had one of those clips at the back that it was a cheapo little, it looked like a bum bag, but and I ripped it off and I threw it under the bed. I knew I had enough cash in my pocket in forints to sort it out. And they came, expected the money. So I figured, all right, let me get off cheap. I've paid them this $1,000. And then he says to me, I can't remember how many forints it was, 1,000, I really can't remember. He says, you know, give me another, which equated to about $5. He says, oh, give me another $5. I'm like, what for? He goes, the taxi back. So really no shame. And I remember that night, I'm like, oh. First of all, I was a nervous wreck, really was, because this is not a common situation where you're sat in a car with 3 goon-looking Russian guys driving across a city that you can't speak to anyone, you can't speak the language, you've got no phone. And so the first thing I did was call up the guy that I had a meeting with, explain to him the situation. I said, come and pick me up, take me to an American hotel chain where they have a shuttle bus to the airport, room service, because I'm not leaving the hotel until I have to leave. So he's come. I said to him, you know, I want to go to the police and make a report. He says, don't bother, it's not going to help anything, you're just wasting your time. Basically, cut your losses. So went to the hotel, checked in, went upstairs, proper room, what you would expect, you know, cleaned up, took a shower, relaxed, decided to go for a nice drink. I think gin and tonic was my drink in the day, so I went down to the bar. Now anybody that remembers the bars at hotels in the 90s in Eastern Europe and Russia and Central Europe is that, you know, more often than not you could find some kind of entertainment at the bar. So I'm sat at the bar, I've ordered my gin tonic, and then the next thing I hear is, hello darling, where are you from? You want massage? I'm like, oh, no, this is the last thing I want. But that's the one thing that I remember how the night ended. Anyway, the next day I changed my ticket, got on the next shuttle bus out of there, and went home with a very bad feeling, like, how could this happen to me? How could this, you know? But honestly speaking, that experience taught me a lot. I took a lot of lessons out of that really served me on the rest of my journey until today. And I think the first one that I want to share with you is, don't underestimate the power of your intuition. I remember when I first realized what a screwed up situation it was, when I got off that bus and I'm looking at these guys washing the car, my first reaction was, let me call the guys I'm meeting with, because this is just not acceptable. They'll pick me up, take me to a real hotel. But that you know, I really didn't want to stay there. But I thought to myself, you know what, it's just for one day or whatnot. But deep down inside, I knew that's not where I should be, but I ignored that. So when you're going into a new place, a place that you're not familiar with, you need to have that hypersensitivity to your intuition. Like, don't underestimate its power. It will guide you. Another important thing that I learned in all this is that you need to be very clear when you're speaking to people who do not speak your language natively, especially when it's something relatively important. Don't assume. And I think that's why I've modified the way I speak English in a certain way when I'm traveling. I don't mean to speak like a lot of people do. They just slow down and get louder. Hello, how are you? No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about using language that is simplified, that is easy for the locals to understand, and make sure that you're limiting the possibility of any confusion, because that was a serious screw up, just asking for a room for the night rather than a hotel room, and it just cost me a fortune. It stressed me out, and most importantly, it just really made me feel bad about myself, as I said. But another thing, and I think for me personally, the most valuable lesson I took out of this, is because experiences give you a certain level of belief in what you can do and what you can't do. And having gone through that and coming out the other end and, safe and sound, and I got home and everything's fine, rather than shy away from traveling more to the region, it did the opposite. I said, listen, if I could survive that, if I could talk my way out of that, then, reckless or not, I kind of thought like, well, I could do anything. And I think that level of confidence is very, very valuable when traveling. It's one thing when you arrive in certain places, and I've traveled a lot. I mean, from little villages in Morocco and all over Eastern Europe and many countries. I think they sense your level of confidence as well, especially these people that try and sell you, and weasels that try to fool you or whatnot. They sense that level of confidence, and I think that one situation, I keep thinking to myself, like, how worse could it get than that? Because I tell you, that was a really frightening situation. But those are the three things that I would say, if you can, when you're traveling, is be in tune with your intuition, be clear when you're speaking to the locals that you need something from them, be clear, make sure they understand, don't assume, and be confident. I hope you enjoyed this little video right here from Golden Sands, Bulgaria. I hope it brought you some entertainment, some value, but most of all, remember, enjoy your journey.